joining our channel today for another tutorial. So today we are going to cover the if statement, and specifically we are going to cover the if statement looking at multiple usage of the if statement. So we're gonna start with a simpler example, which is checking one condition. If the condition is met, return a value. If the condition is not met, return a different value. Then we are going to check multiple condition. So we want more than one condition to be true for us to return a value, otherwise we return a different value. And the third example, we are going to check the condition. If at least one of the condition is met, we return a value. If none of the conditions are met, then we return a different value. And last but not least, we're going to check different condition, and depending on the condition that is met, we have a different value that we're going to return. So this Excel file represents the classes that we have available, and the size is basically the class size, so how many students are in those classes, and the difficulty level, so it's from 1 to 10, which is the rating, 10 being the hardest class ever. And we have the frequency, and the frequency is how often the class meets, so per week. So 2 meaning they meet twice a week, 3 meaning 3 times a week. So we're gonna start with our first example, which is looking at one condition only, and our condition is if the class size is less than 50 students, you return 5, otherwise return 10. So this is gonna be the simplest form of the if statement that we're gonna use. So you start with equal if, then you open the parenthesis. It asks you for the logical test, which is what is the condition that you're trying to check. So we know our condition is to check for the size being less than 50. So I'm going to select this cell, and I want this cell, if it's to check if the cell is less than 50. So less than 50, and if it is less than 50, what is the return value? So the value that needs to be returned if that condition is true, it's going to be 5. If the condition is not true, we want to return 10. Then enter. So 5 is the return value for the class size of 20. So since we already have our formula in this cell, we can simply drag it down across the remaining classes. So as you will see, 50, this class size is 50, so it's still, the class size is not less than 50 students, therefore it's returning 10. For 100, again, it's returning 10 because it's more than 50. Anything that's less than 50 are returning 5. So this is the simplest if condition available. So now we're going to check multiple condition, and our condition is we need to check if the class size is greater than 50 and the difficulty level is greater than 6, we need to return 10, otherwise we return 5. So this is going to be somewhat simple as well, just follow me along. So equal if, since we are checking multiple condition that needs to be met, we're gonna add enter, we're gonna add and within the parenthesis, then you open a parenthesis. Now here we're going to give what is the condition that needs to be met. So we want the size to be greater than 50, comma, and what is the second condition? We want the difficulty to be greater than 6. So greater than 6. If we had more than 2 conditions that needs to be met, you can keep going with the comma, and you put the second, the third condition, fourth condition, and so forth. But since we only have 2 conditions that we are checking, we are just gonna close this parenthesis, then we put a comma. So if those conditions are met, meaning that the size is greater than 50 and the difficulty is greater than 6, we need to return a 10. Otherwise, we return 5. We close the parenthesis and enter. So let's check to make sure that our formula is returning the appropriate value. So for calc 1, the class size is 5, which automatically is not meeting our condition of the size being greater than 50, therefore it's returning 5. So I know my formula is working, so I can simply drag it down across. And as you see here, we don't have any class size that's greater than 50 with a difficulty greater than 6. So here we have calc 2, the difficulty is 8, but the size is 20. Anything that has difficulty greater than 6, the class size is less than 50. So that's why on the complexity column, the return values are 5. So this, in the third example, basically we are checking, we want to make sure that one out of the condition that we have is met in order to return the value. If none of the conditions are met, we return a different value. So we want to make sure that the class size is less than 20, or the frequency is less than 3. And if one of the conditions, either the size is met or the frequency is met, we return a yes, otherwise we return a no. So it's going to be equal if. So on the previous example we use AND, but here we're going to use OR because we are checking either condition. So OR, we open the parenthesis and we're going to check the size. So if the size is less than 20, comma, and our second condition is if the frequency is less than 3, I close the parenthesis. If those conditions, one of the condition is good, we put a yes. If the condition, none of the condition is met, we will put a no. And I'll close the parenthesis. And I can drag this down. So before I drag it down, you just want to make sure that your formula is correct. So if we look at calc 1, the class size is 20, so it does not meet the class size of being less than 20, but the frequency is less than 3. Therefore, it meets one of the two conditions, which is what we want. That's why we return a yes. Let's say we change the frequency to 5, for instance. Then it goes to no because none of the conditions are met. So we have the class size, this one is not less than 20, and the frequency is not less than 3. So in this case it returned no, but I'll bring it back to its default value that was 3. I think it was 2. So that's why we have yes. So I will drag it down all the way. And as you see here, so frequency of less than 3, so this one is not less than 3, and the class size is not less than 20. Therefore, we have a no as the return value. So the last example is we are checking for the class size. So it's going to be, we're going to check multiple conditions. So if the class size is less or equal to 20, then our return value will be low. If the class size is less than 50, our return value will be medium. If the class size is greater or equal to 50, our return value is high. So the way this one works, equal if, parenthesis, so we start with the first condition. So we start with the size. So we go size is less or equal to 20. If this one is correct, we want to return low. If it is not correct, we want to check the next condition. So I'm going to put after the comma another if statement. So if the class size is less than 50, I want to return medium. And if it is not, I want to check the last condition. So I'm gonna have another if statement. So if the class size is greater or equal to 50, return high. And if none of the conditions are met, I want to return, let's say I want to return 0. Now, the trick is to make sure that the number of parentheses are appropriate. So since we had 3 conditions, we need to have this first condition, this first parenthesis is taking care of the last if condition. The second parenthesis is taking care of the second if condition, and the third parenthesis is taking care of the first if condition. So if you had, let's say, 5 items that you needed to check, you need to make sure that at the end you will have 5 parentheses that you will need to close off the argument that you put in. So I'll put enter. So low is the return value for calculus. So we say less or equal to 20 is low. So 20 is low. So I'll drag it down across. So again, calc 2, 20, low. Algebra is 50. We say if it is greater or equal to 50, we put it high. So 50, high. And anything that is less or greater than 50, greater or equal to 50, it's going to be high. Anything that's between 20 and 50, it's going to be in the medium, right? So 30, of course, it's in the medium. 30, medium. 45, it's medium. So just to recap, we use 4 examples on how to use the if statement. First, we check for one condition only, and very simple. So it's going to be your simple if statement. You check one condition. If that condition is met, you return a value. If it's not met, you return a different value. And the second example is we use the if condition when 2 conditions or more conditions needs to be met in order to return a value. And this is where we use the AND statement to make sure that those conditions are being captured. And the third example, we have to check that at least one out of the multiple conditions that you have is met and returning a value, otherwise returning a different value. And the last one is we are checking multiple conditions, and each condition will have different value depending on what is how the condition is being met. So I hope you had a good understanding of the if function with the complexity that it has, and I hope you can use it. If you like the video, please drop a like, leave a comment. If there are questions on how to use one of the condition or one of the example with specific, please leave it in the comment as well. And thank you for watching. We'll see you at the next video.